Travut.
I'm Norah Zuniga Shaw, and we're here in Zagreb, Croatia, as part of a workshop and installation of synchronous objects. It's part of this ongoing sharing of the work globally. Well, I mean, synchronous objects was created by Forsyth and Maria Palazzi and I together, and the three of us have all kind of continued to disseminate it together and separately over the last couple of years, since 2009 when it was launched online. And one part of that has been kind of a commission from the Goethe Institute, which is the German kind of cultural ambassador or cultural institution for sharing German culture. And they created a Forsyth module, and synchronous objects is the focus of that. And so what they do is they send us around to sites in the world that have less access to Forsyth's work. And we share synchronous objects in the form of lectures. I do a lecture, usually, and a workshop either for dancers or for interdisciplinary groups. And we've been doing these also installations, different forms of installations.
What do you think is the strength of this project?
Of synchronous objects?
Yes.
I think possibly it's ongoingness. This is kind of what the loop is, right? We describe the project as coming from core choreographic resource, coming from dance, flowing into data, and then into objects, and actually back into the studio, back into practice again, right? So it's more of a loop. So what's exciting is to see how it gets activated in the world. That's been the best part since launching it. Not only the way we activate it out there by doing workshops, but people who write to us are using it in their dance history classrooms or their design studios or architecture classrooms or in their own practices and forms of analyses. So that's the best part of it, is to see what it catalyzes in the world.
And so, but also you see that this is an initiative of a company. I think it's also a remarkable step, you know, like how William Forsyth, you know, practically envisions to create some kind of embodied literacy or literacy about movement or... So, and it's things that I heard today in the workshop. Can you expand a little bit about that?
Well, I think synchronous objects started from a real field-building impulse on the part of Forsyth. He was interested in, or at least the way he expressed it to us, was an interest in creating a new kind of readership for dance, inviting people into looking at, in this case, his work in other ways, looking at how it works, not necessarily just looking for what does it mean or what's the story, but how does it work, how does it function, what are its systems of organization. And then also taking responsibility as dancers to make that more explicit. So it's not just about others seeing better, but also describing in new ways what it is we know, not only on the studio and on the stage, which we do very well and we should continue to do, and then what else is there? What else might bring people into an inspired relationship with this form of knowledge? We learned deeply making this project with Forsyth, learning from his interest in counterpoint and from this dance, one flat thing reproduced. And now in the workshops, I'm doing what I hope others are doing. Yes, I mean, synchronous objects itself connects the classical to the contemporary, right? Which is something that happens all the time in Forsyth's work. But it as you know, it's looking at this idea of counterpoint and making counterpoint visible, or taking a deep structure and bringing it to the surface so that you can see counterpoint in new ways in this dance, so that you can see counterpoint in the world around you, and so that you can reconstruct and create counterpoint in new ways, as we do in our objects, right? And so then in the workshops, I'm doing that same thing, but inside my own practice. So I came to this project as basically trained in North American improvisation practices, Simone Forti and others of this nature. And bringing that next to the classical ballet and the exploding of the classical ballet canon that is the genius of the Forsyth Company. So you bring those two worlds together, and they actually come together beautifully. And this is the story Forsyth is always telling. The classical is contemporary. It's just expanding on it and allowing for it to to twist it a bit.
Like the thing is, like, how can we understand classicism as some kind of formalism that then is almost, it's a structural, but it has dynamics, that is not about poses, that is not just about imitations. You know,
Yeah.
it's a kind of a different kinds of intelligence.
Oh, that's so smart, Marlon. Yeah, it is a kind of structural classicism that we're talking about, which then relates to formalism, which then can relate to other disciplines.
Yeah.
So it's this radical mobility of ideas that is what I find so exciting about doing this.
Well, it's a lower level epistemology, or a higher level, if you want to put it in a way that you are trying to see what is common, perhaps. And that's what when you were saying dance, data, object, all right? Then, of course, we are privileging the dance perspective, right? Because we're coming from the choreography, but then can be object, data, object, object, data, object, object, data, object. You know, being dance, one of the many objects that are abstractions of relationships or connections.
I mean, this project actually, it's a kind of politics of the project to place dance at the center of interdisciplinary discourse and ask for a really deep attention to what dance is as a form of knowledge, not dance really, choreography in general, and then more specifically choreographic structure as a part of what choreographic is, and more specifically within this particular dance and this particular maker's idiosyncratic approach and his company's culture. So it's a very specific idiosyncratic story that we're telling that then has perhaps general relevance. But you're right that the politics can be shifted. I think too often, actually, though, the engineering, the science in our culture is coming first.
Of course.
So to
and
kind
architecture.
Architecture. Wonderful things. But to be explicit about what we know as dancers, to invite people in to say, let's go ahead and put this choreographic knowledge at the center for a while and see what it does. It really is a kind of politics of the project.
You know, when
all of us have been lecturing all over the world, really, just trying to share the ideas and enjoying getting some feedback, seeing how it's resonating or not with people, what it is out in the world, and doing the workshops. And the workshops, what I've done several of them now, and I've started to realize there's three main stories that the project holds that can be activated. I'm sure there's others, but three for me. One is the story about scoring or drawing or creating a...
Look at that.